Yes, welcome to the No State Project live from the fortified compound here in Mesa, Arizona. Glad to be with everybody today as you all start filing in. It is what day is it? It's March 20. I'm a little bit ahead of the game here. It's March 4th. Yeah, because I can read. It's March 4th, 2020, and I'm glad to be with everybody here today. I actually, maybe I'm going to try to, if I can't take calls again on Saturday, so that's what I got to let everyone. Yes, Wesley, hey, I can't take calls again today, but you can post questions regarding the topic of what we're talking about today. So what I did was tentatively, we have some tickets, more tickets were thrown out. In fact, I just found out right immediately before the show that somebody else had gotten some tickets thrown out today. And, so that, and I want to talk more about logical fallacies because I did some of my own on the last broadcast that it was pointed out to me. I don't, nah, I look, I think I was clear, but obviously I wasn't clear enough. So I gotta correct the record there. But I appreciate everyone tuning in today. And Nelson, again, appreciate the support of the show. And yes, if you, Nelson, one of the generous contributors to the show, I appreciate that. If you would like to help support the show, it is markstevens.net and markstevens.sells.com. That's SELZ, markstevens.sells.com. And your generosity is appreciated. Mark in Wisconsin, always appreciate the support. So markstevens.net. And of course, if you anybody misses part of the show, it's always posted at markstevens.net. Yes, I was a little bit late getting the last show posted, but things happen. So one man show here, regardless of what some people may think, was actually and I'll talk more about this in the coming weeks, actually accused by somebody of being the head of an organization, of a movement. And it's news to me. I had no idea that I was head of not just an organization, but a movement. Wow. And here I was thinking it can't be much of a movement looking at the numbers. Again, I appreciate people tuning in, but we don't have a lot of people tuning in. So, yeah, just more false accusations against me. But hey, comes with the territory. People are going to do that. But what it is, an example of is a violation of the rules of professional conduct for lawyers, that they're supposed to be candid towards the tribunal. So I don't know what movement he says that I am the head of. Maybe you guys could tell me, well, movement? What the hell is this guy talking about? A bowel movement? I'm only in charge of my own. Organization? What organization? What are these people? But the ethical rules have never been a barrier to lawyers who want to just do and say whatever the hell they want. It's just like labeling me a sovereign citizen, someone who has consistently spoken since 2003 publicly that there are no citizens. And I give the evidence to show why. But nonetheless, it doesn't matter what I characterize myself. See, it doesn't matter what we characterize ourselves. And I can understand that. The facts are what do the talking. So you can call yourself a good person. You can say that you're an ethical lawyer, but the facts are what really determine that. So I get that. So just because I say I'm not a sovereign citizen or a freeman on the land, you have to look at the facts. It's not the brush that I use. Look at the actual facts. I don't see any facts that would show that I am a sovereign citizen. And let's not forget, and I'll get more into this with the logical fallacies. When they label you or I a so-called sovereign citizen, that is a dog whistle. Because the FBI the DOJ there, the feds, they consider sovereign citizens as domestic terrorists. Domestic terrorist. Yeah. If he has a difference with you, the new snowflake ways to give you a subversive person title. It's no different than what the impeached president does. He just gives you a nickname: Sleepy Joe Biden, Crazy Bernie, all the stupid adolescent nicknames that this petulant man-child has to give. And then, so it's one thing to get a nickname. It's another thing when somebody goes and they're out of their way to paint you as a domestic terrorist. I can't even even if you disagree with what I talk about here on the show, if you disagree with my legal arguments, that there's a mountain of evidence that people, have been successful, and there's 2 more that I'll get posted. None of that matters. You just have to smear the person as a sovereign citizen. And they do it in and out of court. See, this is not in court. And this lawyer is doing this to me. I am a predator and a domestic terrorist. There aren't any facts. But hey, when the hell is the lawyer? How many lawyers are really concerned with the facts? So they smear. They smear. But I'll get more into the logical fallacies. We do have 2 tickets dismissed. I don't actually. I want to do a video with all the documents because Lee in New York has been on a roll. I mean, this guy has really gotten a lot of stuff thrown out, and so this is enough. So far, in the 2 months that we've had of this year, this 2 months and almost a week into March over here, we've been killing it in New York. Of course, I know there's going to be some that has nothing to do with the actual defense. We're still getting a lot of things tossed out in New York, which is New York City. Oy vey, oh my gosh. New York City. But I don't have the I don't have much details, but I will do 2 videos. And yes, I will have the 2 tickets thrown out, and I will have to put in a train wreck. And that's the thing. Regardless of how much good faith you show, there's always going to be somebody out there that just completely ignores the facts. But congratulations to Lee, and I can't remember the name. I was just trying to find the name of who got the tickets thrown out just today. Let me see. Are they? Yes, Robert, and yes, he has the. He has the paperwork, so hopefully, I'll just redact what you need. If you don't need a redacted, Robert, then I won't do that. But I'll always do your physical address or your mailing address. So congratulations to Robert and Lee in New York for standing up to these people. Because, hey, there's a lot of merit to just doing it yourself and standing up to these people and not just throwing in a towel. And there's going to be times where it's not really you have to exercise discretion where it may not be something you want to do at that time. There may be other things to do. But I think there's always merit in standing up for yourself and putting the burden of proof where it belongs, which is one of the logical fallacies. But before I get into that, I just wanted to make mention of something that was brought to my attention. Now, this is an old story. It's just one of those things where you say, well, is it just the one? And just because they got caught, does that mean they stopped? So about 5 years ago, it was reported that Motel 6 were giving out, this is in Rhode Island, that managers and people who worked at Motel 6 were given police lists of their customers. And the police were then using that list in order to check for warrants. Wow. It's just like, I remember you go into one of these box chains. I guess it doesn't matter which one. And it was about 4 or 5 years ago. Well, like when this article came out. And if you wanted to get certain cough medicine, like Sudafed and whatnot, not only was it behind glass and locked up, but you had to have a driver's license that they could take your picture and provide that with the receipt of what you bought to the local police. Because yes, buying one box of Sudafed, and you're Walter White. Yeah, that so that's why it's not hard to believe that motels are giving lists of their customers. Now, this is different if there's obvious signs of child trafficking or prostitution. Well, I don't have an issue there as far as morally. But let's just say for the sake of Motel 6 doing something that's ethical, or what they believe is the right thing to do, if there is evidence of some wrongdoing, actual wrongdoing, yeah, especially if it involves children, of course, call the police. But just giving out customer lists, wow, that's yeah, that's really overstepping it. So what is someone saying here? I guess some Wesley's asking, can we call in whenever we can? I don't have a call line today. We're going to do our best to get the call line back on a Saturday show. Everybody knows who listens to the show, and if you're new, love the support. Play with technical issues, but at least I'm still able to do the show. So, we're going to cover a lot of stuff here today. But this Motel 6 story is from 5 years ago, and I'd have to look up to see if there's more doing that, if anybody else has been caught doing that. But that's pretty creepy. That, in addition, when you find out that you hear stories reported that Airbnbs, they're putting cameras, hidden cameras in there. So motels have been doing that, and hotels have done, they've done that for you. There was the Comac Motor Lodge back in the late 80s, early 90s. They got caught videotaping patrons. So yeah, it's not just the government types that invade your privacy. So yeah, that's pretty nasty. Pretty. Okay, so let's get to the logical fallacies. John Palermo, who I think is Paisana. Well, with a name like Palermo, my family, Mia Familia della Carini, which is right outside Palermo. It's part of the metropolitan area of Palermo. Not that everybody with the last name Palermo is from that area, but of course the story is that a lot of times when you have that name, I have a family name Randazzo, which is part of another city in Sicily, that a lot of times with a foundling, they gave them that the name of the place. But who knows? But John had pointed something out last week that I thought I used some, maybe I didn't. He's pointing out that I engaged in a logical fallacy, and that I was generalizing about Republicans. Republicans do tend to be very gung-ho about the police. That's is it all of them? No, but they tend to be the law and order, like the impeached president had said that he's the law and order president. And I made a see, can I find it here? I made a generalization, and so I got to correct that. And I don't like when it's done to me, so I apologize there. It's not all Republicans, just like not all Republicans support the impeached president. Not all Democrats support abortion as birth control. So generalizations are pretty bad. I get hit with this all the time, in that they think that if it's like the nuance of argument is completely lost on these people who are supposed to be schooled to the level of a doctorate degree on how to understand the nuances of arguments. But of course, they throw that all away just to smear people, or to, in their effort to push a false narrative. That just because someone has a similar argument, that you can lump them in with that group. Do sovereign citizens claim that the laws don't apply to them? Yeah, a lot of them do. Does that mean that I am a sovereign citizen? No, I have a bit more nuanced of an argument, and it's not the same thing like I explained last week or the last show. My position is there's no evidence to support their claim that the laws do apply because I'm physically in Arizona. That's different than just screaming from the rooftop, hey, the laws don't apply. And sovereign citizens don't say the laws don't apply. They say they say that statutes, which are just policy, don't apply. They claim that they're not actual laws. They don't say that the Constitution doesn't apply. They don't say that the common law doesn't apply. In fact, sovereign citizens are very big into saying that the sheriff is the highest law enforcement officer in the so-called state. They don't deny the existence of states. They don't say that there's no evidence whatsoever to support a legal argument that there are states and citizens. Quite the contrary. So it looks similar, but it's not. And all it comes to, we're gonna throw everybody into the same thing. And generalizations are, of course, bad arguments. And they can be used, I think, deliberately to smear people, which is what is being done to me by this particular lawyer. Well, it looks similar. Really? Does it? Is it the same argument? Didn't you learn any? See, that's the thing. I think they know how to parse an argument. They know how to look at the nuances. They know how to look at the difference, because I know for a fact enough lawyers have come out and they've lost their friggin' minds, because if I use a ruling that says this is prosecutorial misconduct, they look at the underlying facts and say, well, the facts were different. Okay, there's like a million ways that a prosecutor, can engage in prosecutorial misconduct. It's just like murder. There are a lot of ways to murder somebody. Just because somebody, like Jeffrey Dahmer, slit their throats and hung them upside down and then ate them, that doesn't mean that that's the only way to commit murder. But murder is the general element, or categorization. It's how you categorize it. So I know that lawyers are taught and understand the nuances of argument, and to look at the facts and look at the logic of the argument. So when it's done to me, it can only be what it appears to be. It's deliberate. So I didn't use the generalization deliberately. I wasn't trying to do that. That wasn't my intention. Some Republicans are decent people. Some Democrats, most are good, but they're just misguided. They just, or ignorant of certain things. But when someone is painting me as a sovereign citizen, that is deliberately to paint me as something I'm not, so that instead of addressing the argument, which is why they're doing that, you can just bypass the argument. And domestic terrorist, oh, he's insane. Oh, he's one of these why am I being detained people. And if you go through the history of my show, I'm not one of these why am I being detained people. I'm one of these keep your effing mouth shut people. You identify yourself, which is under threat, duress, and coercion. If they ask you questions on advice or counsel, I am not answering questions, and you keep your mouth shut for the entire time that they're talking to you. Oh, but it's similar. Well, if you're unsophisticated and can't tell the difference between an issue of fact and an issue of law, maybe. It's just like the example that I've given here on the show before. I'll do it again. In tax cases, they like to take my issue of fact and say, well, it's similar. So I'll say that the agent has admittedly no evidence to support their legal claim that just because I'm physically in Arizona, the laws apply and create an obligation to file a return. They'll turn that into, well, your argument that you're not a taxpayer within meaning of statute, well, that's frivolous. That's not, well, it's not my argument. Well, it's similar. Why? Because they're both they're both tax arguments that related to taxation. That's the only similarity. That doesn't make them the same argument. But this is what these lawyers do. This is what these prosecutors and this is what these bureaucrats will do. They will lump you in to smear you. And it's, and unfortunately it works. That's why they do it. They wouldn't keep doing it if it didn't work. So here, the example that I give is that the U.S. Supreme Court, the court that really matters. Who gives a damn what the tax court said if the Supreme Court said the opposite? Supreme Court is the one that holds they're the highest one. They're the one, whether you like it or not, that's what the law's supposed to be, is whatever they say. Well, in Gitler's versus Commissioner from 2001, they ruled against the IRS. Said they didn't use the word frivolous, which would have been nice, but they did say it was wrong and dead wrong. So I can go ahead and do the same thing. Well, there was a similar case where the Supreme Court ruled against the IRS, said they were dead wrong. Well, Mark, that's not the same argument. Well, it's similar. It is similar. Yeah, you see, Turnabout, they don't like that. They don't like it at all. Do not like it one bit. And then there's one, and I know, I have spoken about it before. And it has to do with the burden of proof and burden shifting. And so to see a real live example of this, you see what Colby Granville did to me. So if you go back to, I didn't have hair. I was shaving my head for family. So it was 2013. Wow, 7 years ago. And when I was asking for evidence to support their claim that the laws apply because I was physically in Arizona, he basically shot back and said, look, we have jurisdiction because we said so, and it's up to you to prove otherwise or prove that we don't. That is a logical fallacy. That is shifting the burden. And so basic logic teaches, and even in law, even in the courts, in and out of court when you're dealing with government, the burden of proof is on the accuser. Now, they may be able to hit a prima facie burden and create a rebuttable presumption or create a presumption of correctness, which they'd have, let's say, like in tax cases. But it has to be based on facts, not an assumption. And so what Colby Granville did, and this is very typical, the IRS will make, or the government types, just men and women forcing us to give the money. It's all they are. They will make declarations. They will make legal claims, just opinions. And then, like Colby did, and then turn around and say, we have jurisdiction because we said so, and it's up to you to prove that we don't. That's burden shifting. That is not fair. And that you do not get a presumption of correctness and have the burden shifted to your victim just because you made an argument or you made an opinion. You have to have facts. That even the courts have been unanimous on this, as far as I know. Even the California courts have ruled that way. Now, obviously, that's what the precedent is. That's what the legal principle is. They don't follow it. Oh, why should they follow their own rules? It doesn't apply in tax cases. It doesn't apply. So there we get the burden shifting. Very, very common. Again, in our situations, it's easy to show that they don't have. That all we have to do is ask them for the facts. See, if I'm going to show that if we're going to accept your false premise that I had the burden of proof, then I'm going to ask some questions to bring out the facts and to see if you really do have a presumption that there is a rebuttable presumption. And that presumption is rebutted if you can show it's not based on facts. And Helvering versus Taylor, the U.S. Supreme Court, Adamson versus Commissioner is one of them. A lot of cases that show that you can defeat the presumption of correctness in a tax case or a drug case, whatever case it is, by showing that the foundational legal claim is not based on fact, but based on an assumption. But they got to stick to it. They got to stay. So that's a big, that's a very common thing where they say, the prosecution says that the laws apply and because you're here and now you got to prove otherwise. Well, I can prove that by showing it's an assumption. The problem is they don't always want to accept that, which is kind of unfortunate. And this kind of, it dovetails or it connects with the ad hominem. So The generalization is also a form of an ad hominem. Now, an ad hominem is not an insult, just an insult. So if someone just says, Mark, you're an idiot, that's not an ad hominem. Now, I've been, I tried pointing this out to somebody, but again, when someone has it in their head that you're always wrong, but an insult is different than an ad hominem. Just calling me an idiot or stupid. Yeah, I can see the one who likes to insult. Always coming back. An ad hominem is when someone uses an insult instead of as sort of a means to defeat your argument. Well, Mark, your argument's wrong because you're an idiot. Or Mark, your argument is frivolous because you're a sovereign citizen. That is an ad hominem, not an insult. It's insulting, but it's an ad hominem. It's an attack on the man, not on the argument, which is pretty common. Well, he's just a spoonerite. He's just an anarchist. He's just regurgitating Spooner. See, it doesn't address the argument. The old ad hom, pretty common. And so by painting you or me as a sovereign citizen, it negates the argument. Or it avoids the argument. It doesn't negate the argument. It certainly doesn't defeat the argument. So let's see. Talked about straw man. The appeal to emotion or the appeal, and I like the appeal to popularity. Yeah, the appeal to emotion. Very difficult to discuss any kind of veganism or abortion ethics without people appealing to emotion or appeal to popularity. See, that's another one. But Mark, everybody knows the laws apply. Everybody knows that, or all the lawyers know that. Or if you weren't such an idiot and you had gone to law school, you would understand. Everybody knows that. Yeah, because you can always count on having a intelligent discussion when somebody goes with the everybody knows. No, let's just look at the facts. Let's examine this. Every concept, every philosophy, every idea is subject to criticism. It's subject to investigation. To hold that something is absolutely set in stone and is not open to investigation because everybody knows. Every lawyer knows. Oh, wow. Every lawyer should know that the Supreme Court has already ruled less than 5 years ago that passing a law that a doctor who performs abortions has to have admitting privileges within 30 miles of the clinic. Every lawyer knows that the Supreme Court ruled that way. Every lawyer knows that. And yet it's right back at the Supreme Court. It's back in less than 5 years. Exact same legal issue. The exact same legal issue. But I thought every lawyer knew. Every lawyer knows that the Supreme Court ruled that way, or they're reckless in not knowing. And yet they're still going to try to change it. They all know what the law is, but they went and they passed and did that anyway. They all knew. Because just because everyone thinks they know something doesn't mean it's true. See, appeal to popularity. And I spoke last show, the Ash conformity test. What people say publicly can be radically different than what they say privately when they're not under scrutiny from the tribe. So if you're not familiar with the Ash conformity test, check it out. It's been replicated many times. An appeal to popularity, or hey, everyone knows that slavery is the natural condition of Africans and non-European white people. Everybody knows this. Everybody knows that slavery is their natural condition, that that's the way nature, it's your appeal to nature fallacy. Everybody knows that. It's just like when talking about veganism. Everybody knows that we have teeth just like a lion. Everybody knows that. Everyone knows these are canines for position. So these are not good arguments, and you can see why. It's just like it didn't appeal to authority. X equals Y because a lawyer said so 200 years ago. Does that mean it's right? So here we've got an example happening right now where the Supreme Court is being asked to rule on the exact same legal issue that they ruled on less than 5 years ago. It's going on. They were hearing oral arguments just today on that. Why? Because just because a court says it, just because the Supreme Court said it, doesn't mean it's true. Ask anybody who is horrified 10 years ago with the Citizens United decision. Horrified. There, John Roberts went in direct opposition and overruled decades, 100 years of precedent from the Supreme Court. Just wiped it out. Because just because a court says it's true doesn't mean it is. See, at least to me, the appeal to authority applies to the courts also. I don't, you want to have some objectivity or some consistency to know that whatever is legal or moral changes at the whim of a lawyer. So just because the Supreme Court said that separate but equal is fair and is constitutional doesn't mean it really is, because we all know that was overturned less than 100 years later. That's why there's such a big fight about Roe v. Wade. They want to stack the court with people like Brett Kavanaugh. Anytime someone says this is true because someone said so. Wow. Some of us, I hope it's a lot of us, are skeptics and realize that's not going to wash. That's just not logical. But it's legal. Okay, it's legal. What does that mean? What does that mean? It means it's okay by those people called government. They said it's okay. That's what it means. It's not a statement of whether it's right or wrong. It's not a statement whether it's ethical or moral. And you're talking about a group of people who force others to give the money. So someone recently, when the question I had posed that most didn't want to come on the show and answer directly. Is government, the organizations we call government, are they moral and legitimate organizations? So someone goes, yes. See how easy that is? But the thing is, if you just say yes, you're not giving a supporting argument. What's the argument? Why do you believe that government, as constituted, is moral and ethical and legitimate? Well, it depends on how you're defining an organization. And you get into that hair splitting. It depends on what the word is. Is. Not jizz. Is, you idiot. So I've been told that basic principles of logic have no business in a courtroom. If that's true, wow, we'd have some. Maybe in China? Saudi Arabia? Yeah, I'll give you that. I'll give you that. When you're in authoritarian, totalitarian places like that, where people who are homosexual are thrown off of buildings and or stoned to death, or you've got organ harvesting going on live people because they disagree with your politics. They actually criticize you. Yeah, I'll give you that. Basic principles of logic don't apply there because they're not interested in justice. They're not. There's no window dressing like there is in the United States or Canada. Other places like that, England, where they're claiming to be administering justice. Really? Okay. All right. Yeah. So, and how are you guys? How are you supported in your? How do you collect your money? Yeah, that's right. Because you force strangers to give you money. Here's another one. The non-sequitur. The non-sequitur. This is a pretty common one. Remember, it doesn't negate the argument or defeat the argument to just say it's legal, dude. All the lawyers think, if you're just so damn stupid, you don't understand. No. Basic principles. When we are examining an organization's actions, you don't do it with just the organization's rules. I've explained this before. It's not anything groundbreaking. It's just applying basic principles of logic across the board and not allowing for a sacred cow. So the making of jumps in logic, the non sequitur, and this, one of the big ones, is, of course, saying that the laws apply just because we're physically in Arizona or the United States or we're physically in Canada. That's a pretty damn big jump in logic. And no one, I have not encountered anyone, and I've talked to a lot of people on this, no one is able to give the facts and logic to prove that a written instrument from 1910 applies to me and creates obligations just because I'm physically in Arizona. You can't just, well, that's the law. That's not an argument. You're assuming your premise is true. It's begging the question. It's another logical fallacy. It doesn't prove. So I've even asked this. How exactly does my physically being in Arizona prove this written instrument applies and creates obligations on me? It doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't. So that's your non sequitur. Because all it is trying to obviously control the narrative, but it's to keep you from looking beyond their argument. And they want you just to accept the argument as true. Well, why do you have to accept the argument as true? Because they will put you in jail if you don't participate. They'll just put you in jail. And then you'll have people on YouTube that will cheerlead. Damn right, you should have just went. They blame the victim. They just blame the victim. Okay, so assume the conclusion of an argument, a kind of circular reasoning, is also called begging the question. That's another one here. That's what you're doing when you just make that assumption. And then what you do is you have your cheerleaders go out and say, you can't challenge that claim in court. You can't. They'll pull out the paintbrush. It's political. Can't do that. It's political. Oh, philosophy. You can't discuss philosophy. Oh, ethics. You can't discuss ethics in court. I thought that was pretty funny, though, when somebody told me, when a critic said that you cannot use ethics as a legal argument. And I was like, well, I certainly know that the judicial canons of ethics say that the judge has to be impartial and must recuse himself if there's the appearance of bias and impropriety. My dog Rex is saying, Mark, it is not possible to be physically in Arizona, a figment of the imagination. I am using lay terms here, my friend. Lay terms, not words of art. When I'm speaking and I say physically in Arizona, I'm not mentally putting Arizona in all caps, if not that makes a difference anyway. Arizona is real. Jim Flask is saying illusions don't show up in court, Mark. You are selling snake oil. Gosh, I wish I could take phone calls right now. I'm selling snake oil. I know this, Jim. I know that Arizona doesn't claim anything. No, what you have is real people claiming to act on behalf of a body corporate and body politic, and I already know that those aren't true. I already know that there's no material existence at all to the body politic or the body corporate state of Arizona. I get that. But there are still men and women making a claim on behalf of their organization that they call the state of Arizona. Sounds like hearsay, don't it, Mark? You're garbage. Well, at least you spelled "your" correctly. See, that's the kind of stuff that you have to deal with when. So I'm being called an idiot. Hearsay is not admissible, Mark, you idiot. Yeah, no kidding. Hearsay is not admissible. You want to give me the 26 some odd exceptions to hearsay? See, it's like some of them Republicans in Congress and the Senate. It's hearsay. It's hearsay. Hearsay's not admissible. You know what? Hearsay is definitely admissible when they're going to get a warrant to arrest your butt. Yeah, they can use hearsay to get a warrant for your arrest or a search warrant. So at certain points during proceedings, hearsay is admissible. So, yeah. And there are over 24 exceptions to the hearsay principle. And I get that it's not admissible. And we challenge the officer's assertions. But I would rather challenge it on the facts that he relies on to support his claim than shouting hearsay. Because hearsay is a statement that's made outside of court when they're not in court to be cross-examined or examined on the veracity or the competence and credibility of the witness. Oh, and by the way, if you're in England, hearsay is admissible in a much broader way than the United States. So it kind of depends on where you're at. So I appreciate the criticism with the insult, though. Yeah, that's why I like to just say, back up the shows now, people. We don't know when the show is going to stop. Anything you don't challenge is accepted, Mark. Oh, you dropped the insult. So a pat on the back. You can be sort of respectful. Yeah, no kidding. That's why I even I've said that about the judicial notice. You asked about what they've taken judicial notice of. So, yeah, no kidding. Captain Obvious over here. But, yeah, I know. I think I've gone through enough of the logical fallacies for today. And I think I'll mention one more in that no, I think I'm gonna pull the plug now. This guy thinks Trump built the effing wall. I'm rolling. Mark, so who in their system told you that you are? Everyone within their grasp is in their system. So I don't have the time to break that down and show how factually how inaccurate that is. Yeah, that's the kind of thing where you're only in the system if you admit it. If you let them, they'll kill you otherwise. They'll put you in prison. I mean, they have the power. So this show is about anarchy. I don't get it. I don't get the trolls. So, all right. I appreciate everyone tuning in today. We covered some pretty good ground. I will do what I can to get the call line back because that's somebody I want to call in and lay out his case. But hopefully we'll have the call line back on the Saturday show. I will do my best to get the video up with the two new success stories with the tickets getting tossed out. One of them in New York. I think the other one with Robert was in Kansas. I think so. And remember the learn the logical fallacies. Review them if you haven't in a while, and learn to recognize bad arguments when you hear them, because some people are fairly sophisticated and they can make things sound pretty good and divert attention away and make it seem like your argument has been defeated when in fact it hasn't. So your logical fallacy is a pretty good place to start. You can just go and do a search, and you go use the wiki, the Wikipedia for that. That's part of what I was using today. Like the red herring, diverting the argument to unrelated issues, which is another common one. Was what? How are the roads? How are all these services going to get paid for? So, but I appreciate everyone tuning in, and if you want to help support the show, I appreciate it. It's markstevens.net and markstevens.cells.com. I will be back live on Saturday. Of course, that's at 2 Mountain Standard Time. And so till then, salud a tutti.